Were perfect. If it was the greatest thing for Democrats and Republicans, we wouldn't get one Democrat vote. They're going to vote against it.
President Trump telling the nation that Congress is no longer looking out for the folks. It's all about politics. Talking Points will address it. Perhaps the most underreported story in the world is American troops confronting terrorists in the Middle East. Tonight we'll talk with former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta.
Any advice for President Trump?
Cut back on the Twitter.
Replace and repeal Obamacare. Build the wall.
Also ahead, Waters at the big Trump rally in Tennessee last night, seeking advice from the folks.
What would you like to see happen to these protesters?
They need to go home and get a job.
Caution. You are about to enter the No Spin Zone. The factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Wiretaps and your health. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. The two things are separate, thank God. Today, the leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee issued a statement saying they have no evidence that anyone tapped the Trump Tower. Not a surprise. Also today, the White House dragged our pal Bret Baier into that, and he will be here shortly. But first, a debate over your health and how the country should treat you. Fact number one, we need a new health care system because working Americans are paying too much for health insurance, and the federal government is running up debt that will eventually harm every single one of us. So Congress needs to move it. But no matter what the Republican majority in Congress comes up with, the opposing party will not vote for it.
If we had the greatest health care bill ever in history, and we needed 8 votes from the Democrats to get us up to the 60 number that you would need, they wouldn't vote for it. So it's a very selfish thing. They're doing a very, very bad disservice to the country.
Now, it's certainly true that Obamacare passed in the first place without one Republican vote. So to be fair, partisan politics dominates both sides of the aisle. But there's one very important difference. Obamacare was an unknown when it passed in 2010. Now, we know it doesn't work because health insurance premiums are rising for too many Americans, and a number of health insurance companies are simply bailing out of the system because they can't make enough profit. So the situation must be improved for the good of everybody. So here's what should happen. The federal mandate that all Americans must buy health insurance is not a good thing. Even though the Supreme Court said it's constitutionally okay, it really isn't. Feds have no right to tell us to buy anything. However, there are millions of Americans who simply cannot afford health insurance, and those folks should be able to receive government assistance, but in order to make it efficient, that assistance should come from the states through Medicaid. Also, health insurance companies should compete nationwide. That would drive down the premiums for working families. In addition, those Americans who do not buy health insurance, who won't buy it, should have to pay a bit more for coverage after they get sick. Simply not fair for someone to wait until they have cancer and then want the same insurance rate as a healthy person. It's also not fair for the partisan press to say folks will lose their health insurance if those same people refuse to apply for Medicaid or whatever. I mean, come on. As Talking Points laid out last week, there's a huge conflict between the Bernie Sanders people who want free medical insurance for everybody and conservatives who say you should pay your own way. That's at the heart of the health care debate, and it's never going to be resolved. But for the good of all Americans, these pinheads in Congress should try to get the best possible bill and put their ideology on the shelf. Working Americans do not deserve to be gouged paying for health care insurance. And yes, we're a compassionate country, so we have to have safety nets for those who cannot support themselves. The problem is the cannots mix with the will nots, and the system gets hammered. But that's another problem that's never going to be solved. There will always be irresponsible Americans who game the system. Talking Points believes the Republican version of Obamacare will make it through the House with some compromises and arrive in the Senate at the end of March. There are a few Democratic senators who might be won over, but only a few. So a new health care law is shaky, to say the least. And that's the memo. Now for the top story reaction. Joining us in Washington, former Republican Senator Jim DeMint, now the president of the Heritage Foundation. So what say you, Senator?
Bill, great points. Let's remember the goal is for every American to have a health plan that they can afford and own and keep. As you just said, Obamacare has made that impossible, raising the price of health insurance, lowering the choices. Unfortunately, the first version of the House bill does not change a lot of the cost drivers or put consumers in charge. There's several things they can do to improve this bill. I think they will get a bill through the House and the Senate and to the President. But we can't continue to expand
All right, but
Medicaid.
give me a couple of specific things that they can do to improve the bill. Real simple, so even I can understand it.
Okay. To improve the bill, they need to freeze enrollment of Medicaid expansion. It doesn't make any sense to continue to enroll people in Medicaid who are healthy.
Cap Medicaid, all right? But that's a state-by-state situation.
It is, but it's not only not good insurance, it's second-rate insurance, but it raises the cost of private insurance because of the cost shifting. The other thing they need to do is put consumers more in charge, Bill. They create a new federal tax credit, but it goes straight to the insurance companies. This bill should have an expanded health savings account concept where this tax credit can go into it, Medicaid can put money into it, employers can, and eventually even Medicare can put money in it, and people can use that to buy a health plan.
That's very confusing, Senator. That's amazingly confusing, and I know my audience sounds good, but it's incredibly confusing, and they have to simplify it down. It's not. Listen.
No, it's simple. It's like putting money in your pocket and you can shop for health care. Okay. Unless you let consumers shop for health care,
somebody going to send me
and
a
have
check?
More choices.
No, they're not. They're going to let me. They're going to let me make deductions on my income tax. Okay, when I have health expenses, which is fine with me. I don't have a problem with that. And then they're going to let me set up accounts, tax-free accounts, to pay for incidentals and things that I need. And I don't have a problem with that.
But that's what health savings accounts are. Yeah.
But you said that you believe it's going to get through the Senate. Do you really think that this new health care law is going to get through the Senate?
Yeah, it won't have any Democrat votes, but it'll go through with 51 Republicans.
Yeah, you think they'll all rally? All right. I hope so. I really do. Let's give it a try, and if it doesn't work, then we'll throw that out, and, we'll all be holistic on it.
Bill, they'll improve it. It'll be a better bill.
Right.
It'll be one step, I think, in the right direction, and I think the President will sign it.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate it. Next on our rundown, the White House under fire, because evidence shows there was no tap on the Trump Tower. But the issue is still white hot, and Bret Baier is in the middle of it. You'll be here. And later, Bernie Goldberg has lots to talk about, the Trump tax return situation and partisan hatred growing. Those reports after these messages. Dr. Follow-up segment tonight, as we mentioned, the leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee say they have seen no evidence that the Obama administration tapped the Trump Tower during the campaign. Today, White House spokesman Sean Spicer was grilled on that and replied this way.
On March 3rd, Fox News chief anchor Bret Baier said the following, quote, "There's a report in June 2016, a FISA request by the Obama administration forwarded intelligence surveillance court to monitor communications involving Donald Trump and several other campaign officials."
What Mr. Spicer is referring to is an interview Bret did with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan.
There's a report that June 2016, there's a FISA request by the Obama administration Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to monitor communications involving Donald Trump and several other campaign officials. Then they get turned down, and then in October they renew it, and they do start a wiretap at Trump Tower with some computer and Russian banks, and it doesn't show up anything by reporting. Have you heard that?
Well, again, and like I said, none of us in Congress or anybody that I know in Congress has been presented with evidence to the contrary of what you just said.
So you believe it to be true?
Yeah, that we have seen no evidence that anybody in this campaign or any other American was in on it with the Russians to meddle in our elections. We know they meddled. Russia is an adversary, and that's something we have to work to counteract.
I got it. But my point is that the Obama administration was pretty aggressive. A couple of FISA requests.
No, I hear your point. But I'm saying, but I've seen nothing of that. I've seen nothing come of that. That's my point.
And joining us now from Washington is Bret Baier. So you're getting a lot of airtime, Baier. You know? You're getting to be real famous. Spicer, and he promoted you, chief anchor of Fox News, and my heavens.
Yes.
Now, to me, all right, all that matters in this insanity, and that's what it is, insanity, all right, that the president started when he tweeted out that he believed President Obama tapped him in the Trump Tower. All that matters is whether a FISA warrant was requested by the Obama administration. Is it possible to say yes or no to that question?
To your answer, both the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee, chairman and ranking members, have said they have seen no evidence of a FISA request for surveillance of Trump Tower.
Okay.
Now, let me just explain that whole thing and the question while I have the time here. What happened was it was a pre-taped interview with Speaker Ryan. I was going through a series of things that I wanted to ask him. I came across a Real Clear Politics write-up of public reporting that had been compiled the night before by Mark Levin, and it was listing all the things that had been publicly reported by different news organizations. He compiled it in a talk show, and he's talked about that. Real Clear Politics just summarized it. So I asked Ryan about these reports, saying, had he heard anything about it? To be honest with you, Bill, I expected the speaker to say no, and we would probably cut that part out of it. But because of his answer and the way he kind of cryptically answered it, I asked again, you heard me, and asked again, and it seemed like he was somehow tangentially confirming it. Well, we went back to Paul Ryan, and he said, no, that's not true. I haven't seen any evidence of surveillance.
What he misunderstood, and I think it was an honest mistake, was you were asking him if he saw any evidence that the Russians were involved with the Trump campaign. I don't know why he would have thought that was your question, but he did, that's what I think happened.
No, I agree with you.
But I want to be very clear on this. The whole thing is now settled that there was no FISA warrant requested by the Obama administration. As we sit here, it's settled because the House and the Senate intel people say they can't find that.
They have not seen it. Now, I should caveat that they have not heard officially from the Justice Department, the FBI, and they're expecting to tomorrow.
The two senators did.
Yeah, the two senators were briefed.
And Feinstein. That would have leaked, I think. But let me ask you one more question here on this crazy stuff. Last night, President Trump told Carlson, all right, that in the next 2 weeks, he's going to throw something out there that's going to back up, at least partially, what he tweeted.
Yeah, and there goes the question marks again. I mean, I don't think anyone knows what that is. Here's what possibly happens, is that Americans and possibly Trump campaign people are swept up in some sort of surveillance that does not target them per se, but is targeting, for example, the Russians. And the question is, how does Mike Flynn get wiped up in this? How do other people potentially get brought into it? And that is something that we don't know the answer to yet. Perhaps there's another element to it the president's talking about here, but the tweet that President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower, there is no evidence to suggest that so far, I'm saying so far.
Right, so far, because the president has the power to get any FISA warrants and look at them.
Of course.
So if he comes up with anything. But look, I'm not going to speculate. I'm just not. Right. I think we've been very fair on this network. You've been fair. I've been fair. We report what happens. We don't get hysterical. On Monday, there are more hearings about this insanity. I think the Trump people would like to go away, but I'm not sure.
Well, I'm not sure, Bill, because you're listening to Sean Spicer to quote me asking the House Speaker a question about reports as evidence of reporting to back up the president's tweets.
Yeah, there might be something, right?
So I don't know where this is going to go, but we're going to report it as we find it.
All right. Bret Baier, everybody. And we would like to make one correction on the story. Last week, we were reporting on the alleged tapping of General Mike Flynn. We said it was likely that he was at the Trump Tower when that happened. But Catherine Herridge is now reporting that General Flynn was actually in the Dominican Republic when he was caught on a wiretap speaking with the Russian ambassador, and we are pleased to correct the record, and we thank Catherine for that information. Next on the rundown, American troops fighting on the ground in the Middle East, and charges that U.S. intelligence agencies are tapping private citizens. More charges. Then later, controversies, former Democratic Congressman Leon Panetta has an amazing resume. Chief of Staff to President Clinton, Defense Secretary under President Obama, and the head of the CIA in the same administration. I've known Mr. Panetta for years. He is a straight shooter.
There's no question that not maintaining a true presence in Iraq so that we could continue the momentum towards trying to secure that country and try to hope that it could govern itself in the right way, I think was a mistake.
Now, that was a direct criticism of President Obama while he was still in office. Joining us now from Seaside, California, is Leon Panetta. I have 4 topics for you. They're all very serious. And let's begin with the U.S. troops fighting in the Middle East. It looks like there are almost 10,000 American military people on the verge of combat in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. What do you know?
Well, those numbers are clearly going up. I know the administration is talking about adding about 1,000 to Syria, and with the numbers that we have on the ground, both in Iraq as well as the fight that's going on in Yemen, we're getting very close to that number. The reality is, if we're going to defeat ISIS, it requires that we provide support for the Iraqis. We are making gains in Mosul. We need to make gains in Raqqa. What we have to do, if we're serious about defeating ISIS, is we have got to move them out of the area and the territory that they were able to acquire. We've got to get rid of the caliphate.
Now, our military analyst, Colonel Hunt, says that American troops are direct in the fighting now. It's not supporting. It's that they're there. They're fighting with these ISIS people in Mosul. They're going to fight them in Iraq, in Syria, in Raqqa. And so that we're going to start to take casualties, as we saw with the Navy SEAL in Yemen. Do you think the American people are going to be okay with that? Because they don't know what's going on right now. This is an underreported story.
Well, I think you're right on that, Bill. I think it would be well if the president might lay a little groundwork with the American people about just exactly what steps we're taking to try to move against ISIS. I think the steps are the right ones. I think Jim Mattis, the new Secretary of Defense, is a tough guy and a smart guy, and I think he's making the right recommendations. But the reality is, anytime you deploy these forces in an area of war, you're taking risks.
Yeah, you're going to take some casualties. Now, have you talked to Mattis?
Absolutely.
Did he give you a call? Have you guys talked?
We've had a chance to talk, and I've always had high respect for him.
I'm glad.
I think he's the right guy.
Okay, so Tillerson's over in the Far East now because North Korea is making all kinds of saber-rattling gestures. You know, Trump's not going to have the patience that Obama had with North Korea. Is there anything that we can do to North Korea to dissuade them from their nuclear development and their missile development?
Well, you know, I think we're taking the right steps right now. We're deploying THAAD missiles to South Korea in order to protect against this increased threat from missile attacks from North Korea.
Yeah, those are defensive missiles, right? Those missiles?
That's correct. They're used for defensive purposes. We're increasing our cyber capabilities there, which is also for defensive purposes. We're working with both the Japanese as well as the South Koreans to try to make sure our coalition is strong and clearly there to defend South Korea if anything happens. But we're dealing with a very unpredictable and unstable
the guy's a nut. And,
North Korea.
And the Chinese, I don't know, you know, they could crush him in a minute. But do you predict war in North Korea? Would you say that's a likelihood?
Well, I think right now, if I had to look at, you know, the number of hot spots in the world, I think North Korea is near the top because they clearly are unpredictable. They're continuing to develop their missile capability, their ICBM capability. They're working on miniaturizing nuclear weapons. All of those steps are dangerous, but more dangerous than anything is just the fact that this leader is unstable and could engage in provocations that could result in some kind of war.
All right. Now, you were the head of the CIA, and so you must be following this surveillance stuff pretty closely. One of the ththings that bothers me is that General Flynn was caught up on a wiretap with the Russian ambassador, and we assume it was an NSA wiretap because we now know he was in Dominican Republic when the tap occurred. But they're supposed to cut out private citizens, they being the intelligence agencies, and not leak out transcripts of FISA warrant tapping. Am I wrong?
Well, I have always operated on the basis that that is highly classified areas that the CIA and other intelligence agencies are engaged in, and very frankly, it ought to be kept classified. If there's any leaking of that kind of information, it's a violation of law.
Right, but were your orders to the CIA that if you capture an American citizen who's not the subject of the tap, we assume that the Russian ambassador was, that you cut him out, that you don't put him in the transcript, that he doesn't go into the record?
Well, Bill, I don't know what happened in that situation.
No. What were your orders, Leon? Your orders. Were your orders to cut out the civilians or not?
In that situation, you gather the intelligence, you look at it, you provide it to the key players. Obviously, if there's private citizens involved, you keep them out of it.
Okay, so your orders were you'd keep out because so Flynn should have been kept out of it, and he wasn't. Now, that disturbs me just as an American because I'm a news guy. I talk to people all the time, all over the place. I don't want to be on some wiretap and then have it leaked out. I mean, the danger there, and I'm sure you understand the danger. Last word.
I'm sure that both committees are going to get full coverage in terms of the intelligence that was gathered on this issue.
All right. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Panetta. Thank you. We'll see you soon, I hope. Plenty more ahead as a Factor moves along this evening. Are there any wider implications to NBC putting out $150 million from its real estate companies, among other things? How does that stack up against other famous politicians? Here now, our Truth Serum correspondents Eric Shawn and Shannon Breen. So, Mr. Trump took major deductions to get down to the 25% margin, right?
He did. There's a deduction of more than $103 million. We don't know exactly what it was because we only have 2 pages of the tax return.
Right.
But the White House statement said the losses take into account large-scale depreciation for construction. So,
okay, so let me just stop because most people don't know all of this, and I'm not being condescending because I had to look it up. So if he builds something, all right, and then he says, you know, it's not worth what I put into it now. So maybe a casino. And they find little ants or rodents in a casino. He can write off a certain amount as his investment depreciates, right?
Right. I think it is 39 years that a commercial real estate developer has. Those years that you can write off an asset like a large casino or a building because it's depreciating the whole time, it's aging.
And it's the same thing if you buy an airplane, you can that can be depreciated, So what he paid, the consensus was fair. He paid 25%, $58 million or $56 million was fair. President Obama and Michelle Obama, same year.
Well, yes. What we know about them is there was a big book deal that was involved that impacted some of their income that year, but they ended up paying a rate of 32.9% on their taxes.
7 points higher than.
So even more, yeah. And the same thing, if you look back at former President Clinton, they were at about 31%, the Clintons that year.
Okay.
The Bushes at 25%. But we also took a look at the Romneys for another year that we have information for them because people say he's a wealthy guy, wealthy businessman like Trump. And so in a comparison for him, he paid 14.1%.
But he was a governor then, I think, in 2005. Was he not?
Yeah.
He was close or anything like that. But Romney was hiding money in Burundi or someplace, right? Oh, it's a joke.
Our research does not confirm that.
Right. We can't confirm. All right. So the Bushes were tied with Trump. All right, the Clintons and the Obamas were about 6 points higher, and Romney paid nothing, and he just gave it away, right?
That's how the story goes, according to some.
All right. Let's get into the unbelievable conspiracy theories that Donald Trump made some kind of deal with the Russians, so now they're blackmailing him to do whatever they want him to do. This has been put forth by all the people on the left. Let's listen to Nancy Pelosi.
I want to know what the Russians have on Donald Trump. I think we have to have that investigation by the FBI into his financial, personal, and political connections to Russia. Okay. And we want to see his tax returns so we can have truth in the relationship between Putin, whom he admires.
Very good. And Factor's learned that Trump got a fur hat. Now, Pelosi and the people who are coming after Trump on this, on the Clinton Foundation, which was clearly hundreds of millions of dollars came from people abroad, they weren't so concerned, were they?
No, there's a lot of controversy, but not from them. No, I mean, Washington Post study said at the Clinton Foundation and the library, 1/3 of the more than $1 million funds came from foreign entities.
Yeah.
7 nations were allowed to donate while Mrs. Clinton was Secretary of State. I remember when we first covered this, 2008, it's like Saudi Arabia can give money, and it's all secret. They, by law, don't have to promote it or publicize it. Saudi Arabia gave from $10 to $25 million for the Clinton Library, not while she was Secretary of State.
But, you know, look, this isn't an ideological program, but if Pelosi and the left are going to be so, well, what do they have on Donald Trump? And then all of this money would proven to be into the Clinton Foundation. I mean, MSNBC wasn't doing show after show after show on the Clinton Foundation. I mean, so I think once in a while in the truth serum segment, we have to expose hypocrisy. And that's what we have done.
Yes, we have.
All right. Bream and Sean. There they are. When we come right back, Bernie Goldberg on the tax return leak. Then Waters at last night's Trump rally. Moments away.
Damn your favorite shows on Channel 114. Plus every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7. Channel 115. The O'Reilly Factor. The #1 cable news show for 16 years and counting.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly. In the Weekdays of Bernie segment tonight, the many implications of leaking Donald Trump's 2005 tax return. Last night, you may have missed the Talking Points memo because our second broadcast was preempted. Here's what I said in part about the tax Trump deal. The Trump tax return reveal, courtesy of NBC News last night. Fascinating look at how the American media has now become a circus of ideology and cynicism. Before the actual return was shown to the audience, the cable news host Rachel Maddow delivered a 20-minute monologue. Talking Points is only going to be 3 minutes. She said 20 minutes worth of stuff, describing various anti-Trump conspiracy theories that she espouses on a nightly basis. Then the real fun started for 2 full hours as a variety of anti-Trump merrymakers put forth more speculation than a panel at a UFO convention, portraying the president as Dr. Evil, bent on destroying Western civilization as he pets his cat. Lost in the Let's Get Trump marathon was the actual leak. No doubt, MSNBC will derive ratings from this madness, which it has ever since they turned into the Sci-Fi channel over there. But it's not all about ratings. Those folks want to destroy Donald Trump any way they can. That's the mission. And they're just getting started. The entire memo is posted on BillO'Reilly.com. Joining us from Miami, Bernie Goldberg. So NBC's taken some heat for this thing. I think they thought they were cute and going to get away with, you know, a good ratings night and then whatever after that. But they're taking some pretty, even from the left, they're taking some heat. Why do you think?
Well, first I have to congratulate you on the talking points. I mean, there were some great lines there about the Sci-Fi channel and the UFO convention and Dr. Evil petting his cat. Hats off to whoever wrote those lines for you, Bill.
That was me.
No. I saw it a little differently. I thought, after listening to 10 minutes of that Donald Trump was the latest villain in a James Bond movie. That was the impression I got. But look, if you don't want speculation on where your money is coming from, here's an idea. Reveal your tax forms. Release the tax forms. Otherwise, you open the door to speculation that you're trying to hide something. Now, maybe he's trying to hide the fact that he didn't give a lot of money to charity. That's not against the law. Maybe he's trying to hide the fact that he didn't pay a lot of money in taxes in other years. That's not against the law. Look, there are people out to get you.
You know, I talked to the president about that, and we just talked to Shannon Bream about almost the same thing. He says that he gets smeared if he put out his tax returns because it's so complicated. He's got so many businesses, depreciation, this, all of that, and that he couldn't possibly defend himself. But the big point is that people don't care, and he was right. They elected him. So why bother with the exercise, you know? I mean, if I were him, I'd probably do the same thing.
Well, I think half the people don't care and half the people do care. But he should release it because it's important that he release it. I mean, I think that's the main point. As far as why Rachel Maddow was taking heat, even from the left, it's because it was ridiculous. I mean, the hype was ridiculous. And when you get to what she released, I mean, give her some credit for what she released. I mean, there was some news there, but not much, because we didn't learn anything about the source of the income. We only got a 2-page summary. The source of the income, where did the money come from, is what's really important. And we didn't learn anything about anything that happened in 2007, 2008, or any other year except 2005, because that's the only year that was released. I mean, is that an outlier or is that typical? We don't know. Well, so
but I mean, you're giving her credit for somebody who handed her the thing. You know, I don't know. You know.
You want some speculation on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, look, whenever there's an anonymous source, the first question for me is who benefits from this? The Democrats don't benefit. Hillary Clinton doesn't benefit. I mean, she insinuated he didn't pay tax in 20 years. The New York Times doesn't benefit. Nancy Pelosi doesn't benefit. I am making no accusations, but Donald Trump does benefit because this release makes him look good.
Could have been somebody who likes him. You know, but it's almost a moot point to discuss it. You know, it really is, because we don't know. But you know,
we don't know, but it doesn't make him look bad. That's for sure.
Okay, so you know, when you're Dr. Evil, you have a lot of things that you can do, and so,
that's right.
Yeah, could be it.
That's
Bernie
a
Goldberg,
very
everybody.
good point, Bill.
Right. Waters on deck. He's in Nashville last night, asking the folks to give advice to the president. Waters is next. The book segment tonight, Waters World. As you know, President Trump had a big rally last night in Nashville, Tennessee. But before that happened, Waters talked with some of his supporters.
How long have you been waiting out here today?
We've been out here since 6:30 a.m.
Since about 8:30 this morning.
I left at 5 in the morning, so I got here at like 9:30 and thought I'll be the first one.
For the love of Pete.
Have you eaten anything?
No.
There's some taco bowls inside.
Oh, honey, lay off.
How excited are you right now?
I'm extremely excited. I'm even more excited to see you, Waters.
I like those sunglasses.
Thank you very much.
Are you flying Air Force One later?
I would hope so. No, I'm not.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
Nashville wants to know where Kimberly Guilfoyle is.
I don't know.
You look like you like Trump.
I love Trump. He's my hero.
What do you want to hear from the president today?
Anything, everything. Because everything he says is going to be good.
Like me?
No.
Any advice for President Trump?
No advice for him because he's doing a great job and he doesn't need advice.
Keep it positive. Maybe cut back on the Twitter, but at the same time, I love it, man. It's so energizing.
Thanks for the message, bud.
Replace and repeal Obamacare.
He's done so many great things already, just drain the swamp.
What would you like to see next on the president's agenda?
Make sure the borders are secure. Build the wall.
Who's going to pay for the wall?
Well, I guess according to the president, Mexico.
I've done the math. It checks out.
He needs to rewrite that Paul Ryan plan because, honestly, it's terrible.
If he does 50% of what he promised, he's got my vote again in 2020.
Who do you think the biggest enemy of President Trump is right now?
Right now, I will still say Americans because his best supporters, Americans, his biggest enemy, Americans still.
Who do you think the president's biggest enemy is right now?
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary, Soros.
The DNC, the Democratic Party.
I want to party with you, cowboy.
Who do you think the president's biggest enemy is right now?
The liberal media. The fake news is just so ridiculous.
No kidding.
The media.
CNN, MSNBC, fake news. The media.
Not me, right?
No, Jesse, you're the best. You're the best.
I like you. You are the best.
The Rhinos.
The Republicans in name only?
Most of them.
Like who?
Speaker Ryan's one of them. Mitch McConnell. Rand Paul, he looks like he might be starting a little dust up.
I mean, the atmosphere just ain't right.
A lot of the protesters running wild. What should happen to them?
They just need to be escorted out, get a job. I would like to see them be more respectful.
You're gonna have to learn to respect me.
Those protesters over there, they're not clogging up our streets. Those are snowflakes. They're melting as we're talking.
I'm melting!
Anything you want to tell Bill O'Reilly?
Bill, I watch your show every night, and you're the man.
Is there anything more?
Always remember one thing. Waters. Waters.
Where we at?
And this is
All right, Waters joins us now from Santa Barbara, California, where he's rooming with Dennis Miller. What are you doing out there, Waters?
I'm giving a speech at the Reagan Ranch tomorrow.
That'll scare the horses up there. That'll scare the cattle. That'll scare everybody.
I'm not going to be on a horse, so don't worry about that.
I understand you had some FaceTime with the president, and we want to show a clip that you'll use on Saturday night. Roll it.
Chuck Schumer, the president of CNN, and Alec Baldwin. If you had to fire one person right now, who would you fire?
Well, I think the Alec Baldwin situation is not good. Chuck, I'm very disappointed because he's a guy that should make deals for the people, not as Democrat or Republican. I thought he'd be a deal maker, and instead he's just an obstructionist.
All right, so you got a fairly significant interview with the president at 8 o'clock on Saturday evening, correct?
That's right. We had about 10 minutes sitting down with him before the rally, and then he let me hop aboard Air Force One because my plane got canceled. So he was nice enough to let me join him back to D.C. So we have some of that, too.
You know, you're hanging with the swells now, Waters, out in Santa Barbara, Reagan Ranch, on Air Force One.
I learned it from you.
No, you didn't. All right, we'll check you out Saturday at 8. In fact, the tip of the day about St. Patrick that blocked the president's travel order. That's because Mr. Trump dealt with it himself just minutes before in his speech tray. As we reported last week, there was no doubt a liberal judge would block the order. No doubt at all. So what do you want us to say? The courts will eventually decide the issue, and that's that. Ben Mitchell, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Why is President Trump required to provide evidence of Obama's surveillance, but Democrats and the corrupt media can make insane accusations against Mr. Trump? It's a double standard. Because the president is the highest official in America. What he says carries far more weight than the partisans arrayed against him. Diane Stavallo, Lenoka Harbor, New Jersey. I laughed at the low job approval numbers for President Trump. Why would I believe polls that were so wrong during the election? Rich in Celia, Yorktown Heights, New York. O'Reilly, how reliable are the polls you report? The Fox News poll's pretty good, Rich. I don't trust some of the others and don't use them. Renee Steffas, Hinckley, Ohio. Bill is a dental hygienist. I was thrilled to hear the tip of the day about keeping your teeth and gums clean. Not only will you avoid pain, but you'll also save thousands of dollars. Tony Novotny, Belgrade, Montana. Here's a summary of your tip, Bill. Be true to your teeth, and they won't be false to you. Ella Hageman, Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm 14. Used to think the news was boring, but as I've matured, I'm getting interested. Classifying myself as an independent. That is the fastest growing political movement in America. Ella, independent. Robert Keck, Rancho Mirage, California. Being a BillO'Reilly.com premium member is great. You know, I like the pithiness of that, Robert. Right to the point. Good no-spin news tonight for all you PMs. Check it out. Richard Dykes, Taft, California. Killing the Rising Sun was just outstanding. America haters should read that book. They won't, Rich. Haters don't look for the truth. They don't care. Trista James, Swanton, Maryland. Bill, hasn't it more recently been believed that the Romans crucified Jesus using an X-shaped device? False reporting, Trista. The way you die on a cross was by asphyxiation. Your lungs collapsed from the strain of hanging down. Slow and gruesome way to go, as we describe in Killing Jesus, just released in a soft cover. Old School, Life in the Same Lane, will be out on March 28th. So there's a lot of reading stuff. You like it. And a quick happy birthday to Helen Laub in Wyoming, 101 tomorrow. Patrick Pagnotti in Pennsylvania, 100 years old. Way to go, guys. Can't do all the birthdays and anniversaries, but when I have a couple of minutes or seconds, I do. Finally tonight, the fact or tip of the day, a repeat of last year's, but maybe it will save a few lives behind the wheel. Don't get intoxicated on St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. It demeans the celebration, the legend of the man, and whatever heritage you possess. St. Patrick's Day has become a huge party situation. That's fine. We want everybody to have fun, but keep it reasonable. Factor tip of the day. And that is it for us tonight. Please check out the Fox News Factor website, different from BillO'Reilly.com. Also, we'd like to spout off about the Factor from anywhere in the world. O'Reilly at FoxNews.com, O'Reilly at FoxNews.com. Name and town if you wish to opine. Word of the day, do not be a blatherskite when writing to the Factor. No blatherskites on St. Patrick's Day tomorrow.